You're listening to the official Reformed Stoic podcast, covering politics, philosophy, theology, conspiracy theories. I'm ready to get to the bottom of this life. Are you? Join Wolfgang, Sketty Squad, Purity Gang, as we strive to take dominion over this dying planet. I am Reformed Stoic, and this is my podcast. Howdy ho! Let's go! Oh boy, oh boy, oh boy. More scrambling for this one. I think I need to start getting in the habit of making these podcast formats the night before, but we always make it in the nick of time, buddy boyos. Skoogie. Let's giddy like the lights in the city. That's what I'm talking about. Let me get my microphone placement hip happening here. So I watched Major Pain last night. I found that semi-jolly, as my dad would always say. Kind of had it on in the background, but I thought it was decent. Boy, oh boy, I'll tell you what, today, not much happened today. Failed to get out of bed once again, but I got a couple of things done that needed to be done. I'm all carved up. Things are going all right, man. I definitely feel decently sore from yesterday. I did not get a workout in. I only played drums for like half an hour. Struggling to keep it flowing, but I can't complain overall. Just one of those days where it's like, should have been a good day, you know, I just slept in. But it still is a good day. We're keeping it real. All right, well, for today's topics, Hurricane Fiona, we're going to see what's going on with that. And then, as I suspected, college enrollment is down. So we're going to take a little look at that. And then a little bit on Christian philosophy. I feel like it might not be a super long podcast today. Just going through the motions, starting the week. I will try to be a little bit more prepared for next time. But for now, let's go ahead and kick off the news segment. You're listening to the Reformed Stoic news segment. Let's go! Very good, very, very good. So, starting off, Hurricane Fiona worse than Maria, Puerto Rico residents to CNN. So, this is today, CNN.
Million Puerto Ricans are still without power after Hurricane Fiona hit the island on Sunday afternoon. Now, the storm washed away, look at this, washed away this bridge as it made landfall just days before the 5th anniversary of Hurricane Maria. Well, Fiona is now a tropical storm, but it is still battering the island with heavy rains and then, of course, causing those catastrophic flash floods.
Emergency teams are still actively rescuing trapped people, saving at least 1,000 already. Hundreds of FEMA workers are on the ground following President Biden's emergency declaration. The president is assuring Puerto Rico, we stand with you and we will get through this together. CNN's Leila Santiago is live in San Juan, where the rising water, we understand, is the major concern. Leila, what are you seeing around you?
Well, listen, in San Juan, we're in the northeastern part of the island, so it's a bit of a different situation from what they're continuing to see, rather, on the southwestern part of the island. And let's not forget the interior part of the island, which really usually sees a lot of damage when it comes to natural disasters related to weather anyway. And so I know Victor showed that video of the bridge that was washed away. I actually talked to a young man who was there last night when that happened. He told me that he was just looking outside his window and that it happened in a matter of minutes. This morning, I was in the southern part of the island, managed to get into Salinas. Salinas, again, right there on the south, kind of central eastern part of the island. And I got to tell you, there is a lot of concern and frustration among the people I talked to. I want you to listen to an exchange I had with a gentleman there. He's a resident and a business owner from Salinas.
Dan, rip that bridge.
Listen.
A lot of people, more than Maria, lost their houses now, lost everything on their houses because the floating. The Maria was tough winds, but this one, with all the rain, it just destroyed everything on the houses. It's unbelievable. It's our town. It's a small town that basically, who's going to take care of this town? Nobody. You know what I'm saying? If we don't take care of it, nobody's going to take care of it.
Real.
And that's the sentiment that I heard echoed by several different people, especially when I went to the shelter. I talked to the mayor there. She said they have more than 2,500 families that are impacted by this flooding right now that just doesn't stop, because the remnants of now Tropical Storm Fiona are continuing to pound this island. And so it's not just the flooding, it's not just the mudslides that we saw on the main highway that we watched as crews were trying to get control of that. It's also water. 60% of customers here, give or take, don't have water. Part of that not available because they depend on power to get that water. And so power, the majority of the island is without power right now. Now, they have been able to restore a small bit of that, but the power is what causes a lot of anxiety that adds to the anxiety from the floods and the images that you're starting to see, because let's not forget the timing here. Tomorrow will be 5 years since Hurricane Maria came and destroyed this island and left many here without power for months. Victor and Allison.
Left them without power and with a lot of anxiety after the storm approached. Leila Santiago reporting from San Juan. Thank you so much.
So in addition to the hundreds of FEMA workers on the ground, Puerto Rico's governor says California, New York, and New Jersey are also sending in people to help.
When it comes to the island's infrastructure and power grid, officials say they are much better prepared to respond to this crisis compared to the one brought by Hurricane Maria 5 years ago. Craig Fugate is a former FEMA administrator. Craig, good to see you again. I want to ask you about what we heard from the man that Leila just spoke about. He said for his small town, this is worse than Maria. As we look across the island and all of the other variables, is this worse than Maria?
Well, the flooding is going to be worse. If you remember, Maria was primarily winds. So where we have these communities that all of this flooding is taking place, you're seeing it blow out the roads, you're seeing it, destroy the buildings. Road infrastructure is going to be heavily impacted again. So where the flooding is taking place, it's probably as bad, if not worse than Maria. But I don't think we're going to see that level of devastation over the entire island, similar to the wind damage we saw from Maria.
Oh, that said, Craig, I mean, we all remember 5 years ago how long we had to report on the power outages because of Maria. I mean, it went on for months and months. In some places, they didn't restore it for 11 months. So now it's been 5 years. And have they shored up their power grid since, 1.3 million customers today are without power? I mean, what's the status of the power grid on Puerto Rico?
Well, we're about to find out. They had done a lot of rebuilding. Some of that was done really quickly after the storm to get power on, and they were going to go back and do more permanent work. So this is an example that, as we saw from Hurricane Katrina, as we're seeing now from Hurricane Maria, rebuilding takes years, if not decades. And so how much has been done, what worked? What I'm really concerned about on this grid is we had a lot of new energy sources put in the system. We're seeing damage to solar arrays. Also, a big limiting factor after Maria was the condition of the roads so that the repair crews could even get in to make the replace power lines. You're seeing bridges washed out, roads washed out. So unfortunately, I think we're going to see a lot of those similar things. what we still need to wait and see is how much of the grid has been directly impacted by winds, where that was so widespread in Maria, or is this more isolated and they can make those repairs and get power turned back on to large areas?
They can't go through this every couple of years. I know you're an advocate for, and we have discussed building a more resilient infrastructure. We've talked about it in the context of the contiguous 48. But for Puerto Rico, what needs to happen so that the next time a Cat 1, even with this amount of rain, that it's not as disastrous as we're seeing it is now?
Well, we've seen some things that were repaired after Maria that were temporary. They hadn't been permanently repaired, get washed away. It's important that when we rebuild after these disasters, we're building for the future, not what's happened in the past. And we're going to have to understand that what happened in Maria was a lot of wind over large areas. Some of these communities that are flooding hadn't had that in Maria. So we're still uncovering that where we have people living in those communities, when we go back and rebuild, we got to build back against all the threats of these storms. It isn't just wind, as we're seeing with this storm. It is water. And in Puerto Rico, we have seen a lot of deaths, people being rescued. And the issue you're raising is...
Yeah, this sucks. I mean, I hate it when hurricanes happen, bad times, but I don't really know if this is a great topic for my podcast. I don't really know what to say about it. I don't really know how many times we need to hear the story over. State of emergency after hurricane. Okay, this one's 1 minute. Let's watch this 1 minute one, and then maybe I'll watch like another video about hurricanes or something. I don't know. I'm gonna try to like cleverly make this topic more interesting somehow. Sorry, Puerto Rico. Oh boy, I'm sure that makes a huge difference. I'm here for you. We're all in this together. Low effort. Okay, let's see here. How about what to do in a hurricane? Let's learn about hurricanes. How to survive a hurricane. All you have to do to stay safe in a hurricane. How to prepare for a hurricane. Superman 3 hype. Storm simulator recreates Category 5 hurricane conditions. That's kind of interesting. What supplies do you need in a hurricane? Oh gosh, not CNN. Anything but CNN. I don't want to get in trouble from watching these other channels. How to survive? I feel like that's risky. Bright side. Not CNN. Anything but CNN. How to prepare for a hurricane. All right, this is short. Let's watch this.
In this video, you'll learn how to prepare for a hurricane or a large storm, and what to do if you find yourself in such a situation. Usually a hurricane is announced in advance in weather reports, so the authorities and the public are informed that a dangerous meteorological event is imminent. If the authorities issue a hurricane warning, Prepare a disaster kit and a first aid kit. Put your documents, valuables, and clothes in waterproof bags. Reinforce your doors and windows with wooden panels nailed down if you do not have shutters. Bring inside any object that may be caught up by the wind and become a dangerous projectile. Bring pets indoors and safely house them in their pet carriers. Follow safety instructions on the radio or television. Act quickly if evacuation orders are issued by authorities. During the hurricane, stay inside whenever possible. Unplug all your domestic appliances and switch off the power supply at the mains. Follow safety instructions given on the radio or television. Limit any journeys. If you must go out, be sure to inform family and friends about where you're going. If you are in a car when the hurricane breaks, stop your car far away from trees or electric cables, which could fall on you. Avoid stopping at the bottom of a steep hill or on low ground susceptible to flooding. Stay in your car. In order to minimize the consequences of a hurricane, regularly prune dead branches from trees and cut down any dead trees. If you live in a house, check your roof regularly to ensure it is solid and waterproof. Repair it if necessary. Prepare a disaster kit and store it in an easy, accessible place.
Oh, this is the most boring topic fucking ever. Okay, do the CIA do this? Weather weapons, weather manipulation. Let's do that. Let's try to make this topic interesting somehow. I mean, I'm sorry for Puerto Rico, but yeah, basically there was a hurricane in Puerto Rico. Weather manipulation. Let's go. History Channel. Controlling the weather. Is it possible? 8 years ago. Weather modification tech. How cloud seeding increases rainfall. HARP has been activated. This is weather manipulation. Is the Gateway Arc a CIA weather controlling device? Let's do this one. Controlling the weather. Is it possible? 8 years ago.
You know, they were talking about climate change yesterday, and now we're learning that scientists and researchers are looking at how to change the weather on purpose. That's right. Lasers now could one day manipulate rain and lightning. CBS This Morning contributor Michio Kaku is a physics professor at City College of New York. Professor, nice to see you. Extraordinary seeing Al Gore and Bill Clinton there together with Charlie, wasn't it?
That's right, yeah.
Yeah, they did not get into this discussion,
no.
though. But it is fascinating. I mean, lasers, really, to change the weather?
That's right. Well, as Mark Twain once famously said, everyone complains about the weather, but no one ever does anything about it. Well, instead of doing a rain dance, we physicists are firing trillion-watt lasers into the sky to actually precipitate rain clouds and actually bring down
Lasers, cool.
Lightning bolts. This is potentially a game changer.
But this is experimental.
It's experimental. However, in the laboratory so far it works. When you have water vapor and you have dust particles or ice crystals, you can precipitate rain. It condenses around the seeds. These seeds can also be created by laser beams. By firing trillion-watt lasers, you rip apart the electrons, creating what are called ions, and these ions act like seeds, like dust particles, bringing down rain and even lightning.
Go ahead.
Well, this fascinates me in part because, too, I remember reading the stories that China had used this during the Olympics, that the USSR had used this after Chernobyl to create rain clouds. I mean, did those really work then? We have some of these capabilities now?
Inconclusive. Even in the 60s, the CIA used this to bring down monsoons during the Vietnam War, to wash out the Viet Cong. Governments have been...
Let's go. The CIA used this to create monsoons to wash out the Viet Cong. Dropping red pills, Ying, whatever your name is.
Alleged to.
thing.
Alleged to.
Alleged to, right.
Yeah.
Now, we realize that for decades now, these governments have been alleged to have experimented with weather control, but nothing conclusive. This time we're bringing in the laws of physics rather than simply waving our hands and uttering mumbo jumbo. We're actually using trillion-watt lasers now. And in the laboratory, sure enough, they precipitate rain out of water vapor. Sure enough, you can actually bring down electricity down the beam.
So what does it mean for drought areas that need to have rain for crops, and if they don't have them, there's the consequences of famine?
Well, the bad news is if it's a clear blue sky, it's not going to do anything at all because it only takes water vapor that's already in the air and condenses it. However, for floods, for agriculture, farmers, for people planning wedding parties, football games, you name it, outdoor events and agriculture and flood.
Yeah, that was a pretty random, that was a pretty big red pill for CBS. All these like boomers watching TV like, oh wow, the CIA created monsoons in Vietnam. Did you know that, Cindy?
Flooding and even hurricanes, all of them could be subject to weather modification.
Incredibly interesting. Professor Michio Kaku, thank you so much.
Okay, we've just about killed a half an hour on maybe the worst topic that I've ever picked for my stream. Let's read a little bit of this article. President Biden speaks with Puerto Rico's governor amid Hurricane Fiona aftermath. According to the White House, Biden, who spoke by phone with Pierre Lucy from Air Force One while returning from the state funeral for Queen Elizabeth II, discussed his administration's support for Puerto Rico's emergency and recovery efforts in the aftermath of Fiona, which killed at least one person in Puerto Rico and one person in the French territory of Guadeloupe. The hurricane also left the entire island of Puerto Rico without power, which a major local energy company said would take days to resolve. The White House said that Biden told Pierluisi, the administrator of the Federal Emergency Management Agency, Deanne Criswell, will go to San Juan on Tuesday to meet with local and state officials and affected citizens to assess urgent needs. The White House said the president described the surge of federal support to the island, where more than 300 federal personnel are already working to assist with response and recovery. With Puerto Rico still recovering from the effects of Hurricane Maria almost exactly 5 years ago, a disaster that led to intense scrutiny of the federal government's response under then-President Donald Trump, Biden insisted he will ensure federal officials remain on the job to get it done, the White House said. All right. 5 more minutes on this topic. Let's see what the comments say here. Bruh, he literally said they've been controlling weather since the Vietnam War. How so many people are manipulated is crazy. If you understand electromagnetics, then you know easily anything with energy can be controlled. One day. They've been doing it daily for many years. Let's go, woke-ass chat. It's possible if you use lithium aerosol to make the atmosphere more electrically conductive so you can manipulate the jet streams. Otherwise, your range is limited. It's a similar idea to using lubricant when you're cutting metal. Is there a drought weapon? Drought weapon. Scientists use beavers to create drought and fire-resistant landscapes. They use... drought and fire-resistant landscapes. Okay. These scientists are altering weather to fight droughts. Droughts around the world uncover ancient artifacts. Let's go. Droughts reveal forgotten histories around the world. Millions face U.S. mega drought. Damn, what's up with this mega drought, though?
Water levels are dangerously low in the western part of the U.S., to the point officials are warning residents to significantly scale back their water use. It's come in the form of a mega drought. It's drying up the Colorado River and draining the nation's largest man-made reservoir, Lake Mead. Here's what the general manager of Southern California's Metropolitan Water District told CBS News.
This is a crisis that we haven't seen in history.
And because of it, for the very first time ever, the Interior Department declared their first Tier 2 shortage on the river, which provides water for 40 million people in 7 states: Arizona, California, Colorado, Nevada, Wyoming, New Mexico, and Utah. For example, Arizona will lose 21% of its water, Nevada 8%. This isn't just a West Coast problem. Federal officials say every single state could be forced to pull back their water usage.
It is in our authorities to act unilaterally to protect the system.
Climate change is partially to blame. Lakes Powell and Mead are experiencing the worst drought in 1,200 years due to chronic overuse. They now just hold about a quarter of the water they used to. Fishing guides tell CBS News they can't believe how fast the water levels have dropped at Lake Powell.
I'm looking at spots that 30, 40 feet up the wall where my bait was hitting where I was fishing just a year ago.
So you're saying literally a year ago, this boat we're on right now would have been 30, 40 feet up there?
Yep. It's absolutely crazy.
If the reservoir is dead pool, that's the term for when water stops flowing under the Glen Canyon and Hoover dams, it could cut water for millions from Phoenix to Los Angeles. That's part of what President Biden's newly signed Inflation Reduction Act hopes to do, prevent that kind of dire situation before it becomes a reality. The bill includes $373 billion to fight climate change, the largest such package in American history. 70% of water from the Colorado River is actually used for agriculture. In other words, farmers will feel these cuts the hardest. The situation is so bad, the federal government wants to pay farmers to not plant their fields. For Inside Edition Digital, I'm Stephanie Officer.
Yeah, we heard about the droughts happening all over the world. These rules only apply to poor people. Rich people can water their yards till the cows come home. Ah, yes, the way of humans, doing everything last minute when it could have been prevented years ago. Telling farmers not to plant seems like a solid way to get a food shortage, too. Not just tell them, pay them so you can make sure they do it. Glorified bribing, that is their plan. Also will increase prices for food. Food is less important than water. The rich will be fine. Month without food, week without water. Bro, who the fuck is trying to go a month without food? Yeah, right. I save as much water as I can by being diligent at home, but it makes no difference when corporations waste millions of gallons every day. I'm gonna gallon my millions of gallons. And do you buy the products that these corporations sell? Love it. Every issue goes straight to corporation and 1%. You can at least give an example. Well, nobody likes corporations in the 1%, so screw you, buddy. Additionally, population is also increasing minus the growth rate. This means there is more demand for water. War over water doesn't really sound crazy, to be honest. It is the fuel to life. My water. I hate seeing those on the road. You don't need a truck if you aren't hauling shit. It's a waste. 80K cuck truck. All right. Well, we got half an hour out of this topic. Conclusion, hurricanes are really boring. Let's go. We got too much water in Puerto Rico with the hurricanes. We don't got enough water near Las Vegas. Get it together, water people. Oh, no comments over here. I wonder why. Yeah, so now we're on the topic of nationwide college enrollment falls. PBS NewsHour. I'm sure the comments are turned off because people are talking about how liberal universities are, how feminist universities are, just basically how liberal universities are and how it's not a very warm, welcoming place for regular people, basically. What used to be regular people. All right, we got 9 minutes here. Let's hope this is good.
The total number of undergraduate college students in the U.S. has dropped by almost 10% during the pandemic. But it's been a different story for some time at many historically black colleges and universities, or HBCUs, where interest and funding have increased. Applications were up nearly 30% at many of these schools between 2018 and 2021. And top-tier HBCUs are increasingly becoming the first choice for some of the country's most sought-after students. Yet, HBCUs face some fundamental challenges, too. Special correspondent Hari Srinivasan has this report. It's the first in our latest series on rethinking college.
I turned down Harvard and UC Berkeley. Harvard, Penn, Yale, Duke, USC, Emory, right down the street, Vanderbilt.
These are all the places sophomores Cadence Patrick and Sakai Parker turned down to come to Spelman College, an all-women's HBCU, or historically black college and university in Atlanta.
There's no, you have to pass this test.
Let's go to an all-black college. Oh, wait, I can't. So, overall, nationwide college enrollment is falling, but applications are skyrocketing at these black colleges. We're losing to the Black Menace. Just kidding. I'm just kidding, YouTube. I had to say that. It was perfect. It was perfect. Will I regret it 10 years from now? Or would it have been worse to have gone on without ever knowing what could have been?
Prove that you're good enough, to prove that you're smart enough, because we've already shown our excellence. In high school, I noticed if I had a good academic standing or a success, it was more so wow, I didn't know you could do that, rather than this is what's expected of you here.
For Parker, on a pre-med track with a health science major, it was her experience at her majority white high school that led her here.
I feel like I had the responsibility to represent for the black community, but also speak for other people about their experiences that I have no idea about. It was very exhausting having to represent all the time.
Patrick, who's studying computer science, said her parents were split on her decision. Her dad favored Harvard, her mom Spelman. For her, it came down to a sense of belonging.
The percent of black students at Ivies is very, very small. And so that can be a daunting statistic to be walking into. There's so few people that look like me who share my experience. I'm gonna have to prove myself.
There's so few people that look like you, and you're not happy about that, huh? Interesting. Interesting. Well, what if I felt the same way? Well, that would be toxic, and that would be racist, and that would be... So now, oh, man. I think everybody knows exactly what anybody would want to say there, bro. She doesn't want to be around people who don't look like her, and yeah, I mean, imagine how we feel.
At every step of the way.
HBCUs like Spelman College have seen a surge in interest. In 2014, more than 4,000 people applied. In 2021, that nearly tripled, with more than 11,000 applicants.
Certificate program for adult learners.
Dr. Helene Gale took over as the institution's president this summer.
I mean, can you imagine if there was an all-white school? Can you imagine if there was an all-white anything, bro? It's just man. This country is just getting tired, bro. This shit's just getting tired.
Epidemiologist and a leader in public health, she spent her career in government and nonprofit roles. She views what's happening in the admissions office as a reflection of the rapid social change in the country.
This is a generation that grew up with a black president. They've gone through some of the social unrest following the murder of George Floyd and kind of the movement.
Oh my gosh, George Floyd was murdered. Oh my gosh, all black people assemble. Imagine if white people cared every time a white person was murdered, dude. Oh man, some guy was eating a fucking hot dog in New York and he got shot. RIP! All the white people of the world are suffering because of Frank, who was eating a Frank and got shot. Man, fuck this shit.
And around Black lives, young people are choosing to be in a place that nurtures them, that recognizes who they are in the world and really thinks about how they can make this generation of young black people succeed.
The increasingly competitive student pool comes as no surprise to Rosalind Gates Brewer, a proud Spelman alumna and the chair of the college's Board of Trustees.
Our talent pools have been very similar to the Yale and Harvard candidates, but Spelman is an absolute deliberate choice.
Before becoming the CEO of the Walgreens Boots Alliance last year, that operates some 9,000 drugstores across the U.S., she's also held top positions at Starbucks and Sam's Club.
About 10% of our class is graduating Phi Beta Kappa. Now, you wouldn't see 45 to 50 black women graduate Phi Beta Kappa from Harvard or Yale, right? But you get that at Spelman College.
Brewer, a first-generation college graduate, is one of only 2 black females running Fortune 500 companies.
There is something that I will tell you that is deep in my gut around taking on.
And she also has a really big neck and kind of looks like a man.
Big challenges. And I'm not afraid of those. And I think I gained that at Spelman College.
While HBCUs account for just 3% of post-secondary institutions,
kind of looks like she's built like Mike Tyson a little bit.
They educate about 9% of all black college students and produce about 13% of all African-American undergraduate degrees.
Historically black colleges were founded with clearly a racial justice initiative to attend to the ways in which African Americans could not attend white colleges and universities.
Professor Beverly Guy Shiftal has been teaching at Spelman, her alma mater, for more than 50 years.
Many of them, for the first time, they have black professors. They also see a black college president, and they hear over and over again that this is a place made for you.
More than 60% of HBCU students are Pell Grant eligible, and tuitions average about 30% lower than predominantly white institutions. HBCUs also enroll more first-generation and academically underprepared students than other four-year schools.
We punch so well above our weight when we think about what we're able to turn out with less resources than many of our peer.
Somebody dropped the ball with this audio here. It's out of sync.
Majority institutions.
But there are still challenges, with less financial help from state and federal governments historically, and far smaller endowments than other schools.
There's been a bias from the very beginning, and you can look at state institutions that are predominantly black and state institutions that are white, and there's always been a huge gap. We don't have adequate housing. We don't always have adequate infrastructure, latest technology.
Federal lawmakers have increased funding for HBCUs, providing nearly $2 billion since 2017, as well as an additional $2.7 billion this year in pandemic emergency relief. Alumni and philanthropists have donated more than $1 billion in recent years, funding scholarships and programs in science, technology, and other fields. But it's still not enough.
There have been lawsuits in states that found that their system underfunded their black public colleges.
Nandrea Njoku heads the United Negro College Fund's Frederick D. Patterson Research Institute here in Atlanta. She co-authored a recent report calling for more funding.
We did a survey of our member institutions, and we found a majority of them have at least $5 million in deferred maintenance. We still need those unrestricted funds to take care of the facilities and upgrade our institutions in the ways that we can continue to retain the students who have increased interest in enrollment.
Better-known HBCUs like Spelman College are not in danger, but other institutions, many of them smaller and in rural areas, have not experienced the same recent surge in interest.
About a third of the HBCUs, 30 to 35 of them were in the red zone, financially precarious. They were tuition-driven, and for an institution to be tuition-driven, it's like an individual living paycheck to paycheck.
John Wilson served as the president of Morehouse College and as a White House advisor on historically black colleges. He's writing a book about HBCUs and says the schools should seize the moment.
We've seen it come and go in cycles. If you go back to the 1980s when Ronald Reagan took office, there was a national climate that was more racially hostile. The ideal is for HBCUs to be in charge of their own magnetism, to not be subject to the whims of the marketplace, but to control your own destiny.
HBCUs also play a broader role in society, with a history of propelling black students into the middle class.
Their social mobility status is transformed. They can go from the bottom quintile to middle class because of the tools and skills that they get at these HBCUs. Spelman is an incubator of black women who go on to STEM careers.
Guy Shiftal doesn't see the interest in HBCUs declining.
To the extent that the U.S. remains hostile to people who are different, you need special mission institutions. You need ones that are Hispanic serving, you need women's colleges, you need tribal colleges.
You need universities for everybody other than white men, bro. In our country. I mean, this is our country too, damn it. Like, everything's just... Fuck, man. Everybody's drinking the Kool-Aid. Everybody's drinking the anti-white male Kool-Aid. And then people roll their eyes when we're like, you know, less than satisfied. Dude, it's just... Somebody in the chat said that we lost. Like, basically, bro. I mean, can you just imagine living in a country where you didn't have to hear this shit all the time? I'm sorry, like, where everybody was just white, and it's like, oh, how is everybody doing? Like, everybody's white, and everybody's fine, and we don't really care about anybody else. Like, this is a burden. We're taking on this burden, and of course, it's just Pikachu face from any liberals hearing me say this, dude. We've given the country away. We're not allowed to look out for our own interests anymore. We're constantly reminded of, like, oh, once upon a time before everybody drank the liberal Kool-Aid, you were privileged. Well, it was a majority white country, and we just fucking lived our lives. That's what white privilege was that we were the majority, and we just lived our lives.
Desperately, and you need HBCUs.
Despite all the challenges facing this group of schools, for sophomores Cadence Patrick and Sakai Parker, it came down to something very basic.
I'm able to, look around and feel like the people around me understand me. It's possible that I can be in a space that is designed specifically for me as a black woman.
Wow, that's probably how Germans felt in fucking Nazi Germany. Wow, it's really nice to, like, be in a space, like, just around mein Volk.
But I can also feel like a sense of belonging and never have to question that.
And that's a powerful reason, they say, that students will increasingly pick HBCUs. For the PBS NewsHour, I'm Hari Srinivasan in Atlanta.
Let's go, everybody except for white people. Oh, now I think I know why the comments are turned off. Woo, that was not very pleasant, was it? All right, college enrollment is seeing broad declines now in the non-only black world. Now to the world where not everybody's black. Colleges are seeing massive decline.
Welcome back to Yahoo Finance. Well, a new report finds since 2019, undergrad enrollment has dropped off by more than 1 million, raising concern about a potential shift in attitudes towards higher learning. And here with more on why kids are hitting the brakes on a traditional college degree, we are joined by Doug Shapiro, National Student Clearinghouse Research Center Executive Director. Doug, thanks so much for your time today. You have a really comprehensive report, and we'll get into that in a minute. But I'm just asking for your sort of sense, why are people deciding to sit out? Is it the pandemic? Is it the higher costs? Is it the craziness involved with trying to get into college at this point?
Well, last year, I think it was pretty clear that this was being driven by all the disruptions of the pandemic. Almost all of the declines last year were in community colleges. And those are the institutions that serve many of the lower income students and communities that were most affected by the impacts of COVID-19. And also that often had difficulty adapting to online instruction. But this year, it's a very different phenomenon. We're seeing a much broader base of declines. The pain is evenly split this year between 2-year and 4-year colleges, especially the less selective and public 4-year schools where affordability and student debt have become larger concerns. So I think that suggests that more students are questioning the value of going to college, not just whether this is a good time to go. I think they're less confident about what the payoff will be, particularly now when there is high demand for low skill workers without a degree, and their wages are rising.
So, Doug, do you know where these students are going if they're choosing to not go to college? Is it that they're taking a gap year or two, or do they not have plans to go to college and they're going to get into a trade, go to trade school, or do they have other plans?
A lot of people who would have been great students are just fucking done with this clown world ass society, bro.
Yeah, we don't really know their plans. It's hard to say. What we assumed when the numbers fell so dramatically last year, that this was a gap year phenomenon. Students were choosing to sit out for a year, hoping that the conditions of the pandemic would improve and planning to come back the next year. But what we found this year when we followed up on those students was just the opposite. Very, very few of them came back this year, even though the conditions on campuses had been much improved. Obviously, we have vaccines, we have much better ability of the
we got vaccines. Dude, how fucking out of touch are these people, man? How out of touch? These masses of men who are starting to get labeled incels and like white supremacists and autismos and like NEETs, all of these guys would have been like fucking Isaac Newton in the 1700s, bro. Like, it's just such a disconnect at this point. These people are so out of touch. There's so many masses of men who are just opting out, and this is sad. This is sad, you guys. People don't like white men anymore, and more or less, like, should I say it? Should I say it? Should I say it? Some of the most brilliant people ever were white men. Is that allowed? Can I say that? I could have said all, but most, maybe.
Colleges and universities themselves to handle kind of pandemic protocols and to reassure students and parents about students being on campus again. And yet, virtually none of those students who didn't enroll last year have come back this year.
Was there a difference, sir, in the drop-off rate at private versus public? And were there certain sort of areas or majors that saw more of a drop-off than others?
Well, it's a very interesting question because, again, this is something that's different this year, very different this year from last year, where we're looking at the situation in four-year colleges that in many cases, there has been a slight rebound in the number of new freshmen coming in, but only at the most selective, the most elite colleges and universities. So the public flagships and the most competitive private nonprofits, their numbers did increase this year. But all the rest of the four-year institutions, the less selective, maybe your regional public institutions and smaller private nonprofits saw continuing declines.
Can you tell us what some of the majors are that are seeing this decline? What are some areas of study that students are not necessarily going into right now?
Well, most of these declines are pretty much across the board. Certainly, they're larger in some of the areas like liberal arts and the humanities, which have been declining for years, foreign languages, communications and journalism, sorry to say. And even in places where there are increases, like in computer science, for example, the increases are quite small, only a couple of percent. So nowhere near the kind of level of increase that you you would expect in the current economy for computer scientists, and certainly nowhere near sufficient to meet the future need for computer scientists in the years to come.
All right, we will leave it there. Doug Shapiro, National Student Clearinghouse Research Center Executive Director, thank you so much for your time today.
I think a lot of the best spoken men are like in these fringe internet political groups at this point. People in the universities are just out of touch, brainwashed. The move to online and the COVID protocols have made the college experience less inviting. I suspect the disruptions for high school students mean fewer marginal students and prepared for college too. Labor shortages have made unskilled work more profitable in the short run. Most likely, these numbers are from major colleges that require you to take 20 unrelated classes before getting into your field. Smaller, less known college jump right into your field. I have a master's degree, and I can say with certainty that it was the worst financial mistake of my life. Based. What is it in? Basket weaving. Me too. What is yours in? None of them will answer. I have a bachelor's for computer science, which is STEM, and the field is oversaturated by people from India willing to price you out of the market by working minimum wage for a high-skilled job. I've heard a lot of people say that, man. Our minimum wages are like middle-class wages to India and Indian people. Have you landed a job yet? Damn, it's hard out there, guys. It's not a bad time to be a failed musician. Spurtismo, leader of the resistance. Sketty. The old model of college doesn't work. It hasn't for some time. A direct path to career is what most people are wanting these days. College turned into delaying adulthood. Who wouldn't pay up for that? Yeah, man. College is so expensive. If you do not get a good job, you are stuck paying off student loans and poverty. College is now the riskiest investment a person will make in their life. Higher education needs deflationary pressures, and the underemployed population needs a faster and cheaper credentialing process for a living wage. Alrighty, gang. Well, let's get to this article now. Why Americans are increasingly dubious about going to college. Dubious. Oh, I'm so dubious. So this is from August 10th, a little over a month ago. This is NBC News. All right. Even as freshmen nervously arrive on campus for the fall semester, policymakers are grappling with what they say has become an alarming decline in the number of high school graduates willing to invest the time and money it takes to go to college. A little understood backlash against higher education is driving an unprecedented decline in enrollment that experts now warn is likely to diminish people's quality of life and the nation's economic competitiveness, especially in places where the slide is most severe. People are waking up to the scam. With the exception of wartime, the United States has never been through a period of declining educational attainment like this, said Michael Hicks, director of the Center for Business and Economic Research at Ball State University's Miller College of Business. Wow, that was a really long title. There are 4 million fewer students in college now than there were 10 years ago. A fall-off many observers blame on COVID-19, a dip in the number of Americans under 18, and a strong labor market that is sucking young people straight into the workforce. But while the pandemic certainly made things worse, the downturn took hold well before it started. Demographics alone cannot explain the scale of this drop, and statistics belie the argument that recent high school graduates are getting jobs instead of going to college. Workforce participation for 16 to 24-year-olds is lower than it was before COVID hit. The Bureau of Labor Statistics, or BLS, reports Focus groups and public opinion surveys point to other, less easily solved reasons for the sharp downward trend. These include widespread and fast-growing skepticism about the value of a degree, impatience with the time it takes to get one, and costs that have finally exceeded many people's ability or willingness to pay, and the fact that they're liberal indoctrination camps that hate straight white Christian men. Oh wait, the article doesn't say that, but I did. There has been a significant and steady drop nationwide in the proportion of high school graduates enrolling in college in the fall after they finish school, from a high of 70% in 2016 to 63% in 2020, the most recent year for which the figure is available, according to the National Center for Education Statistics. The decline is even worse in some states, though not all have data for the same periods of time. The proportion of high school graduates in Tennessee who are going directly to college, for example, has fallen to 53%, down 11 percentage points since 2017. In Indiana, it dropped to 53% in 2020, down 12 percentage points from 5 years earlier, and a Pace State Commissioner for Higher Education, Chris Lowry, has called it alarming. It's alarming. Why don't you take out student loans, Goya? In West Virginia, 46% of 2021 high school graduates went on to college the following fall, 10 percentage points below that state's high of 56% in 2010. 54% of 2021 high school grads in Michigan went straight to college, down 11 percentage points from 2016. In Arizona, 46% of high school graduates in 2020 went to college the following fall, a drop from more than 55% in 2017. In Alabama, recent high school graduates college going in 2020 fell to 54%, down 11 percentage points from 2014. And in Idaho, college going has plunged to 39%, down 11 percentage points since 2017. Americans are increasingly dubious about the need to go to college. You need to go to college! Or not. Fewer than 1 in 3 adults now say a degree is worth the cost, according to a survey by the nonprofit Strata Education Network, which conducts research into and financially supports ways of expanding access to higher education. That conversation has come up more frequently. Is it worth it? Said Jennifer Klein, a counselor at Festus High School in Festus, Missouri, a state where the proportion of high school graduates going straight to college is down by 6 percentage points since 2017 to 61%. I just have more and more parents who are saying, nope, you're not going to do that. You're not going to a 4-year college. Her students' parents just don't value education the way they did in the past, said Amanda DeBoard, an advisor in a statewide program in Tennessee called Advice TN. I feel like that's been slipping for a few years. One Advice TN student who is headed to college, Ever Balladaris, said his classmates' parents in the Nashville suburb of Laverne used to tell them, if you don't go to college, you're a bum. That has changed, however. They don't think that anymore. This is being made only worse by a growing unhappiness among recent university and college graduates with the value of the education they received. More than 4 in 10 bachelor's degree holders under 45 don't agree that the benefits of their educations exceed the costs, according to a survey by the Federal Reserve. Only a quarter in another survey by the educational publishing and technology company Cengage said that if they could do it again, they'd take the same education path. That adds up to a lot of bad reviews passed down to younger siblings and classmates for whom family and friends are the most trustworthy sources about whether to go to college, according to a survey by the Indiana Commission for Higher Education. See what's going on in the comments here. Wow, is a perfect example why the Great Reset doesn't work. They managed to relaunch WoW Realm Society with Classic, and it's starting to trail off. Stop chatting. Stop chatting. Portland is an expensive shithole that I can't escape. I'm trapped. Help me, I'm falling. WoW's world is rotting. WoW, World of Warcraft? Dude, you're freaking out about WoW, bro. The death of America is the death of WoW, okay? I don't know, dude. I don't really play WoW, but it's happening. Zoomers still live with mama and don't even have licenses. American dream turned to American fever dream. Yeah, guys, you know, there's a part of me that wishes that I would have got some fancy degree and been an intellectual. Wish I would have tried really hard in high school, applied myself, got good grades, gone to a freaking Ivy League on a scholarship, graduated high level, and then, you know, joined the Skull and Bones and probably ruled the world, dude. I mean, unfortunately, a lot of people who are, like, intelligent and successful end up rubbing shoulders with not so great people. This isn't a bad way to do it. You know, like having a screwed up life, making a bunch of mistakes, and then eventually figuring out that you're pretty based and smart and, you know, studying on your own, like a schizo, using like PDFs on a fucking Kindle. I think that's what modern intellectuals do, guys. I feel like the Jay Dyers were like the last of the university educated intellectuals. There's still dudes out there with master's degrees and PhDs who are going to walk this kind of path that I'm walking. So I think we kind of got the gist of what's going on there. I am going to go take a pee-pee, and you guys are going to watch Funny Chicken. How about Funny Chihuahua? 100 funny Chihuahua videos. Try not to laugh. You better not laugh.
Oi.
Muted? Who's muted? Mic check. Mic check.
And that's how this sleigh works. Go, go, go. Come on, guys. Go, go.
Thank you.
Did you try and get the cookies?
Look at
Well,
he
you
stole food from Allie's bowl and put it over on that rug to eat it. He is trying to bully Allie. Go eat your food, honey. Don't let that little dog intimidate you. Eat your
Okay. All right. Government assistance is the worst because when inflation goes up, they don't give you more money. They don't adjust for that. A relative of mine is getting the same money as he did 10 years ago. Yo, look at this. This is a meme right here. Laughs in RC Sproul. This is like a Protestant Jew meme. The eternal prot. Okay. So, is everything working? Somebody said muted. Mic check, mic check. We're good, we're good, we're good. Audio capture's good. Okay. I just need a farm and some chickens and goats and a fish pond, some vegetables. Okay. Well, guys, we're already to our final segment for today. looks like it's a pretty short podcast. I'll make sure we get a banger on Wednesday. Kind of thinking we might do a chill stream tonight. It's been a pretty mellow day over here. Dude, once again, I failed to get out of bed. It was pathetic. My alarm went off at 12:15. I was just up late last night, dude. You want to know? Okay, this is kind of like a TMI type of thing, but I went the whole day without cranking it yesterday. And then, like, I was having trouble sleeping, and I cranked it at, like, 6 in the morning. I got out of bed at, like, 6 a.m. to crank it. And I just didn't get to sleep till late. I hit snooze on my alarm until, like, 12:45, and then I finally just turned it off, and then I fucking slept till 2 p.m. So we're still working on that. But anyway, let's get to our religious segment for today. Should Christians study philosophy? From R.C. Sproul. What is the current status of the renaissance of Christian philosophy? This is just kind of generally Christian philosophy for the topic. So,
when I was a philosophy major myself, when I was an undergraduate in college, I received all kinds of flack from my Christian friends who thought it was a leap into godlessness to busy my mind with godless philosophy, and there was no end to the citations from the sacred scripture about beware of godless philosophy. But I came to the conclusion that you can't beware of something that you're not first aware of it. And I talk about having been converted to Christ in my freshman year in college, and of course that was the most significant event in my life. My conversion to Jesus. But I was just talking to my wife, Vesta, the other day about, I said, isn't it something that sometimes you can have a day in your life or a moment in your life that changes the entire course of your life forever? And I said, I had such a day when I was a college student. I was a brand new Christian. I had to take Introduction to Philosophy as a requirement to satisfy social studies and so on. I was completely disinterested in it. I sat in the back of the room, and instead of listening to the lectures, I was reading pamphlets that were copies of Billy Graham's sermons, because that's what interested in me. I wanted to know the Bible and nothing else but the Bible. And one day, my professor, who was the head of the philosophy department where I went to school, who actually was a Christian, was giving a lecture on Augustine and Augustine's doctrine of the creation of the universe, where Augustine talked about...
I'll just say the longer I go on, the more it's like, yeah, I definitely... Like, it's good to get the introduction to philosophy, you know, get like a good overview of the history of philosophy. But yeah, I wouldn't say I'm an expert in like philosophers, you know, like have I read so on and so forth? Like, have I read all of the philosophers? No, not even close. And I feel like they're kind of far down on my reading list, you know, like getting deep into Heidegger, getting deep into whoever, you know, every philosopher throughout history. I don't really see like that's where my study's headed anytime soon, so it's good to have a firm grasp of like philosophy itself, but each philosopher's specific philosophy, I don't know, man. I find my interests going other places lately.
God's creating ex nihilo through divine fiat or the divine imperative by simply saying, let there be, and reality came into being. I was so moved by that lecture that maybe it was an impulse, but I went from that lecture room downstairs to the registrar's office, and I changed my major to philosophy. And that changed the whole course of my life and of my ministry, because the study of philosophy helped me, first of all, understand the whole aspect of critical analysis and how to be alert to logical fallacies and problems of that sort, and to learn the whole history of theoretical thought, much of which has been used to help convey the truth of Christianity to the whole world. You know, the medieval university, it was said that theology was the queen of the sciences and philosophy was her handmaiden. Well, that's been true in my experience and in my teaching. I've been very blessed to have been able to have that background in philosophy to help me understand so much of what is involved in theological reflection. Now, at the same time, there's much of philosophy, particularly contemporary philosophy, that's a barren wasteland. But it's a good thing to understand it and not be intimidated by it. You know, the one book that I read that I don't read critically in that sense is the Bible. Because when I read the Bible criticizes me. I don't criticize it. But when I run into all kinds of apparent theologies and like liberal theology, I immediately see the philosophical assumptions and presuppositions that undergird and have prompted these deviations from historic Orthodox Christianity. So it's been a very great blessing for me to have had that background in philosophy. So I commend you for it.
Yeah, I mean, I feel like I'm decently studied on philosophical concepts, you know, just like the basics of epistemology, metaphysics, ethics, politics, but yeah, knowing a lot about like any given philosopher, having read through like a lot of their works, I just kind of never got around to that, bro, and I kind of keep finding myself studying other things. They say it's good to pick like one philosopher that you really like and get super deep into their work. Yeah, by the time I got to theology, I was a lot more interested in that. But yeah, it doesn't hurt. Doesn't hurt to be able to navigate the world of philosophy with relative ease. I believe Origen said that Christianity was the fulfillment of philosophy. Reading philosophy, whether I agree with it or not, has only strengthened my faith. Yeah, that's a good opinion right there. We need more Christian philosophers because belief in God is relegated to irrationality these days. If you want to be a force to be reckoned with, get into philosophy of religion, especially if it means you construct philosophical arguments and explain how central teachings are coherent, like the soul, afterlife, religious experiences in scripture, miracles, ethics, key doctrine with physics, etc. Can you recommend any books? I read the Bible daily. Everyone should. It's God's holy word. Let's go. The better question is, can Christians study philosophy? Answer, yes. Should they? Yes. And study basic logic, too. But keep the gospel and Jesus Christ first place. Let's go. Philosophy is really cool. Thanks be to our brother R.C. Sproul. Glory be to Jesus Christ. All right. What is the current status of the Renaissance of Christian philosophy?
Dr. Craig, I think I can speak for all of us in thanking you for your faithfulness to God's calling and for equipping the body of Christ to share our hope and our faith winsomely with the world. And I guess my question for you would be, in light of, it seems like the culture is changing very fast right now, and it's being manifested in the universities particularly. I guess my question for you would be, you've talked about philosophy and philosophy departments as a beachhead to perhaps re-engage with the university and re-engage with the culture. And I guess I would just ask you, how do you see that project as going right now in light of so much going on there?
What our brother is referring to is a renaissance of Christian philosophy that's been going on over the last half century or four. So back in the 1940s 40s and 50s, there were virtually no Christian philosophers visible in the United States. And books written by Christians in philosophy were virtually non-existent. Same with apologetics. All you had maybe was Cornelius Van Til and Gordon Clark back in those days. And today we are awash in apologetic materials and ministries and literature and videos and so forth. And I think this awakening among the grassroots in the churches of Christian apologetics is part of the fruit of this renaissance in Christian philosophy as it trickles down out of the ivory tower into the pews, so to speak. And this is ongoing. I am very encouraged. I see a new generation of young Christian philosophers coming up through graduate school to take the place of the older philosophers that are retiring. Alvin Plantinga said a few years ago that he thought that the number of Christians among graduate students in philosophy was 50% greater than the number of Christian philosophers that there are today. Now, if that's even close to true, that holds great promise to the future. Now, to get back to a question that was asked earlier, I want to connect with the collapse of the mainline denominations in the United States, like the Episcopalian Church, the Catholic Church, Presbyterian Church, and so forth, what has happened is that Christianity has lost its cultural influence in the United States. And more, the middle ground is emptying out. We're becoming more and more polarized. You're either a secularist or you're an evangelical Christian. But that middle ground of nominal mainline Christians is rapidly emptying out in our culture. What that means is that if our culture is not to go down the drain, we have got, as evangelicals, to win back that lost ground that the mainline denominations have lost. We have got to beat the secularists at their own game. We have got to be better scientists, better philosophers, better thinkers than them. We need to be involved in politics and in entertainment and in sports and all the rest. I just so long to see a revival in this country where evangelical Christianity will grow and begin to assume a position of cultural influence that was once held by these mainline denominations back in the 1950s. In the most recent Pew studies that I've seen, evangelical Christianity was the only group among Christian groups that is holding its own as a percentage of the U.S. population, somewhere around 25% or slightly more, whereas Roman Catholics and all these other groups are just plummeting. But evangelicals are holding their own, and we need to keep doing that and to do better than that by evangelizing and sharing the gospel, defending the faith, and seeking to be salt and light in a decaying culture.
Let's go. Yeah, a habit I was thinking of trying to start is spending some time every day, like listening to audiobooks. I primarily read. That's cool, esoteric, that you're listening to the Bible at night. I got my big RSV study Bible over here, and I've been reading through the Old Testament. Just started in 1 Kings yesterday. I'm starting to take a special interest in these kings. King David, King Solomon. I want to spend some time really contemplating these early kingdoms. They were kind of based in fashy. Let's go. But they were flawed, ultimately. But still pretty based. Everything's flawed. To the man himself, Dr. William Lane Craig, thank you for all and everything. As long as there are people like you, our faith will never be in vain and Christianity will never fail. Greetings from Ireland. I am devastated. I missed you when you were here in 2017. I wasn't aware of you being here at the time. Yeah, I was actually thinking for that, like, maybe if I paced around every day for like half an hour to an hour, listen to an audiobook, I think that would maybe be a good way to start trying to comprehend some more philosophy. Start trying to, like, take on all of the most important works of various philosophers. I wanted to read, like, Voltaire. I find Voltaire, he was, like, one of the influential philosophers for Illuminati type thinking. So get to know Voltaire a little bit better. There was something by Hume that I wanted to read. Let's see here. I think I have it. I got way too many folders on my desktop. Dude, I hate this when I, like, look over all of these folders and I can't find what I'm looking for. Oh, yeah, it's in a folder called... too many folders. I don't know, dude. The pressure's getting to me. I can't find it. Notes? Okay, yeah, it's in my notes folder. Latest books. An inquiry concerning the human understanding. I think this is Hume, right? Yep, Hume. Hume's Inquiries Concerning the Human Understanding. I wanted to read that at some point. I watched a bunch of lectures on Immanuel Kant, Critique of Pure Reason. I feel like that's just, I don't know. It's hard to comprehend. It's very wordy, but once you get to the bottom of it, it's just not really that interesting. It's exactly what it sounds like, the Critique of Pure Reason. It's this idea that, like, he was watching the Enlightenment kind of thinking take over, and he was ultimately agreeing with Enlightenment type thinking and more or less the replacement of God and religion. But he felt that there was something wrong with it. And he wondered, like, is human understanding flawed? Is our ability to process reality flawed? And he lays out this complex system of, like, you know, we perceive things, but there's, like, an objective reality, and then there's our perception of that reality. Is something getting lost in translation? Is our ability to perceive what's actually there flawed? That's kind of the very basic idea of Immanuel Kant's Critique of Pure Reason. I mean, then there's like Spinoza. Spinoza had some very far-fetched idea of God that I can't really remember at all. I read about that a little bit in Arthur O. Lovejoy's Chain of Being. And then I'm a little over halfway through Aristotle's Politics. Aristotle just kind of like evaluates some early kingdoms and how they run things and some political ideas. So I've read a little bit of this and that for philosophy, a little bit all over the place, but to be very well-rounded and have a great idea of all the influential philosophers, what they believed in their greatest works, that's going to take some time. And ultimately, like, see, I feel like I'm a functional philosopher. A lot of people archive all these different philosophical trains of thought, but they don't know what they believe. See, I know what I believe, and I have been acting on my beliefs and my philosophy. So some, like, masters in philosophy could be like, what do you know about Hume? What do you know about Descartes? What do you know about Heidegger? What do you know about Schopenhauer? They could try to, like, quiz me on my knowledge of all these philosophers, where I'm somewhat lacking, but that's because I found what I believe in, the theologians and philosophers that are critical and necessary to what I believe in, and I've really just been running with that. So rather than, like, gathering a bunch of philosophy that's kind of irrelevant to my worldview. I've just kind of run with the stuff that is relevant to my worldview, and a lot of it doesn't end up being philosophy. So there you go. There's like a little rant on my take on philosophy. Why stream this? Ridiculous. Well, buddy, I'm sorry that you couldn't be more positive because now you're gone forever. Rip old school thoughts. So are we getting a chill stream after the podcast tonight? Yeah, I think so. I didn't get a workout today. I'm going to go ahead and get a little workout in. Throw my weighted vest on and do some calisthenics. Maybe get my food rolling. I might even take a hot bath. I'm going to do a number of things. We'll see what happens. I think we'll be in line for a chill stream in like an hour or two, something like that. But that is it for the podcast today, friends. We made it just under an hour and a half. Read the Jesus Dynasty. Yeah, sure, bro. I think I already kind of looked over that a while ago. What's that guy? Rod Sellers? I triggered him like way back in the day. Rod Sellers, I think, was into that book, The Jesus Dynasty. And I kind of like BTFO'd it a long time ago. But anyway, my friends, yes, continue on your studies. And I would like to make more time for philosophy. But ultimately, when you really get down to it, it's like, yeah, I do think that I'm a philosopher. It's like, well, then why can't you like bore us to death with like basic summaries of like every philosopher throughout history? Well, because a lot of them are irrelevant to what I believe. I'm applying it, baby. I'm applying my philosophy. But it is important, if you pride yourself a philosopher, to get through all those guys. So I will. I'm itching for more, baby. All right, my friends. God bless you. Thank you for being here. Satanism is bad. I will probably be back in like an hour or so for a chill stream. We'll hang out and we'll skid it.